Alright guys, welcome back. Another episode of Cam Plays and Reviews Games years after they come out. Today we're talking about Jedi Fallen Order, not Jedi Survivor, Fallen Order, the first one, because I just played it for the first time, and I haven't played the sequel yet. So we're talking about Fallen Order, the first one in the series. This game was developed by Respawn Entertainment. They also make Apex, Set Legends, and the Titanfall series, as well as this game sequel. This game was originally released on November 15th, 2019, and all footage you're seeing was captured on my Sony PlayStation 5 Disc Edition. So this game takes place 5 years after the events of Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, in terms of timeline in the Star Wars universe. You play as Cal Kestis, who was a Padawan in training to become a Jedi. He was in training when Senator Palpatine decided to execute Order 66, which was the killing of all the Jedis. And this game starts out with you working as a scrapper, taking apart old ships. Then through a series of events that take place quite early in the game, you become part of a small team looking for a holocron, which is just a Star Wars talk for a database. And this holocron contains all the names of surviving Force-sensitive children. So with this knowledge, the goal would be to get this holocron, find these Force-sensitive children, and train them in the ways of the Jedi and kind of rebuild the Jedi Order. But the Empire also know of this holocron, so a bulk of the game is just a race to who can get it first, Cal and his team or the Empire. And that's a very general overview, as always on here, very general, but that is kind of the gist of it. Let's get into the meat and potatoes here. So the pros of this game: traversal and moving around, buttery smooth. I especially like running on walls. I love the wall running ability. It always felt super nice, always felt super clean, but also like you learn a double jump at some point in the game, and just traversal in general felt really smooth and fluid in this game. Along with feeling very smooth and fluid was the combat. Now this game in particular, I especially like the combat because it was nice and simple. And let me explain this for you a little bit. So as a Jedi, you obviously have two major tools in your arsenal: a lightsaber and the Force, as most Jedis do. And what I like about this game and the combat is that in the skill trees, as you progress, you unlock more abilities, more lightsaber abilities, more Force abilities. That's how it goes in most games. But in this game in particular, they kept it nice and simple in the sense that, you get 3 Force abilities, and that's it. And each one you control by either just pressing or holding that button. There's no combinations. When it comes to lightsaber stuff, you have to, it's at most 2-button triggers for some of these new abilities, 2-button combinations. Versus Sifu, as much as I love that game, some of the move sets in that game are so obnoxious. It's 5-button combos to pull off specific moves, and it's just that's too much to remember in the heat of battle. And then they stack, there's 5 or 6 million different movesets that take X amount of buttons, and it's just too much to remember. Whereas Fallen Order kept it nice and simple. I typically don't use all abilities on skill trees like that because, like I said, they usually just get too complicated for me to remember how to use, and there's just so many of them. Whereas Fallen Order, the skill tree was relatively small, and each ability was super simple to activate. So because of that, I was able to use a very large portion of my skills that I unlocked, and I like that a lot. It was just so nice to just see a game keep things simple. And as my friends know, I'm a big proprietor of simplicity in video games. The story was solid and engaging. As a Star Wars fan, I know about this world. I'm by no means an expert, but I know definitely enough to know what's going on, and even a little bit behind the scenes of what happens. So the story was nice and engaging, made a lot of sense. It's not like I was lost at any point in the story. Super solid and engaging story, really liked it, and zero complaints on that front. And the lightsaber customization was really nice. In the Star Wars universe, a lightsaber is an extension of the Jedi using it in a sense. It is part of who they are. The kyber crystal that powers it calls to them, and so in a way their lightsaber calls to them. It's part of who they are. And customizing a lightsaber in this game really helped make you feel like it was yours. I had a nice little gold thing going, and then I picked a good color for the sword, blade part of it, whatever. And beam, I guess would be a good word. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I had a nice little gold situation going, nice beam going on. Oh, it was nice and sexy, and I really liked that. And I just felt like I was able to like put my personality into the lightsaber, as you should, as any Jedi does, and it was just super nice. Not a lot of pros. I mean, the list of pros is short, but they are very substantial. It's like big pros, whereas the list of cons is a little longer, but not quite as important things. I had some frame rate stuttering issues, nothing game breaking or like making me not want to play by any means, but for a game that's been out for 4-ish years at this point, I'm just kind of shocked to see some frame rate stutters at all, especially running it on a PS5. Respawn times can be quite long. When you like jump off of somewhere, it doesn't kill you. Like if you quote unquote fall to your death, it doesn't kill you. It just kind of like takes a little chunk of your health away and quickly respawns you back on the top of the where you jumped off of. And that was really nice with how quick that was. But if you actually die, the respawn time is much longer, especially at times. It felt like it was like a minute plus for me. I was sitting at that loading screen. So just kind of quite long. And it wasn't like that all the time. It fluctuated quite a bit. But there were just times in particular where I was like, man, this is taking quite a long time to load. It was long enough for me to notice that this is quite substantial. There are ample amounts of sliding sections in this game, and it just feels so awful. I hate those parts. Your turning is so heavy and awkward, and you gotta like jump and climb and slide around and dodge things, and it's just, those sections are so awful. And if I could sum these sections up in one word, it would be awkward. Get them out of the game, honestly. I hated these parts. So there are some underwater sections of this game, which typically is never a good thing in any video game unless it's like Subnautica. But this game, there are some swimming and underwater parts, which they were pretty minor, so I didn't mind it too much. But there was an ample amount of chests underwater, and something I found interesting is they didn't really change the chest animation when you're opening it. Some context here: chests are how you unlock some collectibles in the game, and they're kind of scattered all over the world. And typically the chest animation goes, you got your little buddy BD1, a little droid that helps you out. He's on your back, and you open the chest, he jumps in, the lid closes, and the chest shakes around a little bit, blah, 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 and then BD jumps back out and throwing the lid back open and lands on your shoulder. And, you know, nothing wrong with that animation at all. It works pretty well in the game. But when you're underwater, you open the lid and then you close it. The chest just shakes around on its own, and then the lid flies open. Like, what happens to the chest itself doesn't change at all, despite while doing this underwater, BD1 never left my shoulder underwater. So when I'm doing this underwater, I got BD1 on my shoulder. I open it, he doesn't move, chest closes, it shakes around all on its own, and then a lid flies open all on its own, which I just kind of found quite unusual. Like I said, the underwater sections are not a major part of this game by any means, but with the amount of chests that there are underwater, I just kind of found it a little unusual that they didn't just make another animation for this, and they just like took the same chest wobbling yada yada bullshit that they did and applied that to the ones that you open when BD1 doesn't even go in there. So just a little interesting. I would have liked to see it doesn't even have to be crazy. I just would have liked to see something different that didn't defy the laws of physics. And last but not least, the camera in this game is not the greatest. It's not awful by any means. In fact, I really only struggled with it on one planet in the game. You go to several planets in this game, and on one in particular, I found it really annoying, and it kind of got me killed a couple times. But just know the camera in this game does not do well in tight spaces. Most of the time it's fine, but in tight spaces, it was enough of an issue for me to where I was like, okay, might want to write this down for a con in this game. That's really all I got on this. Short, sweet, to the point on the pros and cons. All in all, I did really like this game, a decent amount more than I thought I would. I didn't think the gameplay would be for me, knowing what it was like, but I did really enjoy it. I highly recommend it to any Star Wars fan or someone thinking about getting into a Soulsborne game. And let me elaborate on that. Part of the reason I didn't think I'd like this game is because of the similarities it shares with Soulsborne games. And for those who don't know, Soulsborne games are typically games that are developed by a company called From Software. They consist of like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, Sekiro, things like that. This game was kind of like a light version of that in a sense. I knew the combat was very similar, and for that reason alone, I was like, okay, I don't know if this game's for me, but it was pretty highly recommended amongst my friend group, and I finally got around to playing it, and I'm glad I did. But back to the point, I don't really play Soulsborne games too much, because like I said, they're not really my thing, but being the video game enthusiast that I am, and not only watching many videos on these games, but also my brother plays them quite a bit, and I've watched quite a bit of footage of him playing it. I feel like I have somewhat authority to speak on these games, at least just the nature of them. So because of that, I think this game would be excellent for anyone thinking about jumping into the Soulsborne games, and here's why. There are some similarities between Jedi and Soulsborne games that I'd like to highlight. Invincibility frames, which sounds incredibly minor, but I feel like it's kind of a huge thing with how much it helped me. For those who don't know, invincibility frames is when you say an enemy's doing a large sweeping attack right in front of them, but you go to dodge it and you just instinctively dodge left or right. If it's a sweeping attack and you dodge to the left or the right, in theory it would still hit you. But with invincibility frames, they are frames that no matter what the enemy is doing, no matter if the enemy's attack is quote-unquote hitting you or not, if you initiate that dodge at the right time, you won't take damage. And both games have those. And I know it sounds like kind of a rare occurrence, but trust me, the way I played Fallen Order, I was taking advantage of these frames quite often. And it was enough for me to, like I said, it was enough for me to fucking put it in here as a main key point. And I know the Soulsborne games take advantage of invincibility frames as well. So another good thing to just try and jump into this game and try and master the invincibility frames that you get use of. So one similarity in these is the combat is very similar. It is a melee based game. Obviously you have a lightsaber, you don't get a blaster in this one, so it's all incredibly melee based. You gotta block, you gotta parry, you gotta dodge and roll and stuff, and it's very similar to that in the Soulsborne games as well. So if you're someone who wants to get into those games but you're not really sure about melee combat, jump into this game and you can get a handle of things as well. Get a handle of just melee combat, blocking, parrying, stuff like that. Lastly is that healing and regaining healing items are very similar, and also enemies respawning. Depending on the game, they're called different things. I'm just going to go Dark Souls for sake of memory. In Dark Souls, if you run out of your healing items, you can find these bonfires that you can light and rest at, which not only fill your health bar, they also refill your healing item, but that also respawns enemies, which Jedi Order is the very similar situation, whereas it's instead of a bonfire, it's meditation spot, but you meditate, you can refill your health, that'll respawn enemies, and then you also get to refill your little stims that you use to heal you. But it's just very similar systems there in the sense, like, you're low on health, you find one of these, you heal at it, respawns enemies, and it refills your healing items as well. But there's also some major differences in this, to where this would be Jedi Fallen Order is a great entry point into this. First off, Jedi has adjustable difficulty, Soulsborne does not. I played on the second highest difficulty in this game, and I definitely struggled at times, but it was nothing that I was like pulling my hair out, except for maybe the last fight that was kind of gave me some trouble. But you have adjustable difficulty in here. I think there's like 5 or 6. So if you're someone who really like wants to get the handle of this, get the handle on these mechanics, it's really new to you, you're really struggling, you can always start on like one of the lower difficulties and kind of learn the very basics there of what you need to do on how to like parry, attack, and dodge and stuff like that. And then once you get better, you can go up into the higher difficulties to fine-tune those skills. Soulsborne games, you don't have a difficulty yet in those. You just kind of get stuck in it and you're off to the races. Then you get what's thrown at you. So you don't really get like a good opportunity necessarily to work on those skills. It's kind of trial by fire, whereas with Jedi Fallen Order, you can kind of ease your way into it a little better. In Fallen Order, you don't have to worry about inventory management, which I love that. I have no problem managing inventories, but once again, the simpler the better with me. There's no inventory management other than like your health bar, your healing items, and that's it. Whereas in Soulsborne games, there's typically armor, there's weapons, there's skills that I'll get to that level determines how effective you are with certain items, and you have to keep those items in your inventory. Fallen Order, much less simple. There's a skill tree, not nearly as complicated, and there's no inventory to worry about, really. And speaking of skills, there are, like I said, the skill tree in this game is just wildly simple, whereas the one in Soulsborne games can be quite intricate. The abilities aren't always clear on what they do. Certain abilities level your effectiveness with certain things, and Fallen Order is just much more simple. It gets you used to using a skill tree, but you don't have to worry about it being as in-depth as before. And lastly, kind of looping back to the first point, Soulsborne games deal with a stamina bar, so where if you're getting attacked, rolling takes stamina, blocking takes stamina, parrying might take stamina. I don't know, like I said, I haven't played too much of them, so I can't speak for certain on that. But it's like an overall stamina bar that uses rolling and blocking, both of which make it go down. In Fallen Order, there's only a blocking stamina, so where if you're blocking, you can only block for X amount of times before letting that have to refill. But you can roll as much as you want, and that stamina bar will not go down. So once again, it's just a little bit more simple in Jedi Fallen Order. And because of that, I think that's those are reasons why I think Fallen Order would be a great entry point to someone looking to get into the Soulsborne games. They're very similar, but Fallen Order is like a way more simpler version of it. And all because you like Jedi Fallen Order doesn't mean you'll like the Soulsborne games. And all because you're good at Fallen Order doesn't mean you'll be good at the Soulsborne games. But I just think this is a very good entry point into those. There's definitely similarities in there that you'll definitely feel, but there's also major differences to be aware of, and that there's still probably going to be a learning curve when you get into the harder Soulsborne games. But if you do want to dip your toes into that genre, I feel like this is a great place to start. But that is all I have today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Listen to me ramble about video games. Once again, this was an excellent game that I liked way more than I was expecting. I definitely plan on playing Jedi Survivor, probably sooner rather than later, but I don't want to get series fatigue and mechanic fatigue with all this, so I am definitely going to space the two out by a game or two, particularly one in particular that the boy Numer's let me borrow. I'm going to get that installed, and once this video gets posted, I'll probably start making a video on that, start recording footage. It's definitely a very big, expansive game, so I might not even finish it by the time I make the video, but I am looking forward to playing that game. And then eventually I'll get to Survivor as well and probably do a video on that one. But that's all I got for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, rambling. Like, subscribe, put in the comments, let's talk shop. Subscribe for many more videos, food or gaming related, or maybe who knows what else I feel like making. Appreciate your time. I will see you next time. Play Fallen Order. You won't regret it. All my Star Wars fans out there, if you haven't, highly recommend. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.